Let's get started. Excuse me. Guys. We're good, right? Okay, go to Google Classroom and pull up the text under technology relationships. We're going to be using that a bit later, so you want to have that ready. There we are. All right, we're going to be going through a book called The Belt. But to start with, those of you that have finished your essays right now, take a moment to upload them to turnitin.com. And then you're going to, only the people that have turned it in, you're going to see these little tabs right here for Write Review. You're going to click on Write Review. We're going to do a little trade and grade activity where you're just going to answer questions of, are these 10 things present? Hold on just a moment. 291. Okay, I'll send it right over. Okay, sure. Jocelyn, you need to go to the admin building on the science campus and bring your computer. Jocelyn, where you at? There you are. Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're going to do a little trade and grade activity where you just mark off those things. This isn't actually what determines a person's grade. I just want to let you know. I'm doing the grading. This is for me to assess your ability to recognize that the required sections are present in something. Okay? Let's put the phone away. Okay, thanks. The rest of you guys that are still trying to get the last things put together for the essay, you're still free to do that. HST, I can help you with it. Anybody need more time with this? All right, we're going to move on. All right, you have a paper on your desk. Pull it out, and you're going to take this, do the warm up here. Based on what you know about technology, name one problem that you think could happen in the future because of technology. And put your response, and then talk with your partner, and find out what they put, and put your partner's response. And we'll share out afterwards. One problem that you think could arise in the future because of technology. I've heard a few interviews with Elon Musk about his concerns. Maybe you guys would say some of the same. And you guys can share your answers with each other. Aiden, you have any ideas? Problems that could arise in the future because of technology?
AI will take
Matter of fact, instead, one of you guys share yours. Aiden, just to help with the partner activity, do you want to move your chair over here, or maybe you can move over there? Might be easier. All right, he's gonna move over here. Appreciate you. Thanks.
We'll make your problem. Start spread the foot. Depends on whether you see the count.
Gina, you want to share what you have? You what?
What's
Identity fraud? Yeah, that could be a much bigger problem in the future. And what did your partner have? Hacking? Yeah.
Whatever.
Have you guys heard of the Internet of Things? Have you guys heard that expression? So what's happening is more and more you're having stuff like where Alexa controls things in your house, right? They call this the Internet of Things. Your refrigerator becomes connected to the internet. Your air conditioning and heating, your alarm system, all these things. So think of the potential for hacking when all of these things become connected to the internet. Corbin, what do you have?
I put AI will take over the world.
Okay, all right. That's a very Elon Musk prediction. And what does your partner have?
Starts wars.
Starts wars?
You need technology to fight wars.
Okay, very good.
But it's gone so advanced that all you have to do is press a button.
All right, Jose,
Watch the
what do you think is the problem that could arise
The
in
answer.
technology?
Imagine this Middle East.
Yeah. Do you know examples of that technology being worked on right now? Neuralink, that's right. Yeah. Have you guys seen the video of the monkey playing Pong with his brain, playing the video game Pong? It's just got like a little skull cap, like wires coming out of his head, and it's playing video game Pong. Luke, what do you have? Lack of jobs. Yep, that's a very classic concern about technology. Okay, now before we get started in today's assignment, just want to give you guys kind of an overview of the big picture of where we're going. So we just finished the unit on anonymity and behavior, right? And you notice the things that we did in order. We had the intro, the personal connection. You did a paragraph on fiction, right? And then we did a nonfiction paragraph. And then after that, we had our essay with the conclusion, the call to action added in there, right? And the whole essay format here fits into this. Okay, so now we're doing technology relationships. Do you notice a pattern? This is where we're at right now. Right, so we're doing the fiction. So we're going to be working toward, what do you think comes next? Not today, but in the near future. Writing a paragraph, right? Working toward the whole, just like we did it with the previous unit. It's going to follow the same pattern. All right, consider the themes of technology and relationships. How are relationships affected by technology? Does technology make us more connected to others, or does it come between us? What is your opinion about how to prevent the bad impact that technology has on relationships? Use textual evidence from the belt. That's the reading that we're going to do today. And we're going to use 2 nonfiction sources, even though that part isn't going to actually happen today, as well as your own personal experience. Ray Bradbury is the author. I got a picture of him from the 50s because that's when this book was written, The Belt. And it's kind of interesting to look at how people in the 50s imagine the future. We have these cars that, kind of bubbly looking. There's a bubble over the city for some reason. This I found interesting. They're imagining how people would communicate. And so you have, back then, remember phones, like there was no phones you could walk around with. But here we have people out at a picnic being able to communicate without being plugged into something. It has them wearing headphones, and notice what they have in their hands. A little thing where they can look at each other so they can visually see each other. What does that make you think of today? Yeah, today we can FaceTime with each other. We do it on our phones though. So it's weirdly accurate. Hey Daniel. All right. On your paper, you have a little section. We're gonna encounter some vocabulary that's a little bit unusual today. Nursery. Normally, when we think of nursery, we think of either where babies are, or like in a hospital, where they have like people just taking care of little babies that need feeding, or we think of like where plants grow, right? You go to a nursery and buy plants. But nursery used to be used more in another way. It was a room for children to play. I remember as a child, a babysitter, kind of an older lady, forcing me to watch Mary Poppins. I know it's a classic. I'm supposed to like it. Anyone here seen Mary Poppins? The lady, she comes in the umbrella. You've seen it? You've seen it? Do you remember where, I think it was the dad that was trying to get them to clean up the nursery. And they didn't want to do it. They're like, oh, I don't want to clean. And then Mary Poppins like, I know. Let's play tidy up the nursery. And they're like, oh, yeah. And he starts singing a song and cleaning. You remember that? Anyway, I always thought that was ridiculous that the kids were that easily fooled into cleaning, just calling it playing. But that was the nursery. So that stands out in my mind here. If you remember that scene, that's in the nursery. Okay, belt. This is actually a new word for me in English. I was familiar with the German word. The German word belt means world, but it's an English word, probably borrowed from German, but the meaning's changed if that's the case. It means the African grassland. The African grassland. So draw a little image in each of these. It doesn't have to be a fantastic picture. Something maybe just to kind of symbolize for you. You can just draw like a bunch of little things that look like grass. A little tree, African grassland. Or a nursery. I don't know, little stick figures, throwing a ball maybe. I don't know if they threw balls in the nursery, but. I kind of think having a room for children to play sort of presupposes a better economy, probably. Nowadays, you have to be a bit wealthy to have a whole room just for kids to play in. seems to me. I see a few people still drying. Yeah, you can take a picture of that. You guys are welcome to use your phones to take pictures of the screen. All right. Because the delivery of the actual paper text didn't arrive in time, I have a backup plan. So I'm gonna leave this up while we read. I'm gonna be playing the audio of who's the guy that played Dr. Spock? Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy reading the text, and we'll stop it periodically for you to fill out those sections. So I don't want you guys to have the sections up waiting to hear it, right? Because then you'll miss the highlight. Just trust me, I'm going to stop it and give you time to fill out the questions on your paper, the comprehension questions. So I'm going to leave this up though because you're going to be remembering how to, how to highlight these different sections. So you guys have your text open. The classroom says the text. Have that. Anyone need a minute to get it? Chat, you have it? Is text open?
What's wrong with it? I don't know. Well then, I just want you to look at it is all, or call a psychologist in to look at it. What would a psychologist want with a nursery? You know very well what he'd want. His wife paused in the middle of the kitchen and watched the stove busy humming to itself making supper for four. It's just that the nursery is different now than it was. All right, let's have a look. They walked down the hall of their soundproof Happy Life home, which had cost them $30,000 to install. This house which clothed and fed and rocked them to sleep and played and sang and was good to them. Their approach sensitized a switch somewhere, and the nursery light flickered on when they came within 10 feet of it. Similarly, behind them in the halls, lights went on and off as they left them behind, with a soft automaticity. Well, said George Hadley. They stood on the thatched floor of the nursery. It was 40 feet across by 40 feet long and 30 feet high. It had cost half again as much as the rest of the house. But nothing's too good for our children, George had said. The nursery was silent. It was empty as a jungle glade at hot high noon. The walls were blank and two-dimensional. Now, as George and Lydia Hadley stood in the center of the room, the walls began to purr and recede into crystalline distance, it seemed, and presently an African velvet appeared, in 3 dimensions, on all sides, in color, reproduced to the final pebble and bit of straw. The ceiling above them became a deep sky with a hot yellow sun. George Hadley felt the perspiration start on his brow. Let's get out of this sun, he said. This is a little too real, but I don't see anything wrong. Wait a moment, you'll see, said his wife. Now the hidden odorophonics were beginning to blow a wind of order at the 2 people in the middle of the big outland. The hot straw smell of lion grass, the cool green smell of the hidden water hole, the great rusty smell of animals, the smell of dust like a red paprika in the hot air. And now the sounds, the thump of distant antelope feet on grassy sod, the papery rustling of vultures. The shadow passed through the sky. The shadow flickered on George Hadley's upturned, sweating face. Filthy creatures, he heard his wife say. The vultures. You see, there are the lions far over that way. Now they're on their way to the water hole. They've just been eating, said Lydia. I don't know what. Some animal. George Hadley put his hand up to shield off the burning light from his squinted eyes. A zebra, or a baby giraffe, maybe. Are you sure? His wife sounded peculiarly tense. No, it's a little too late to be sure, he said, amused. Nothing over there I can see but cleaned bone, and the vultures dropping for what's left. Did you hear that scream? She asked. No. About a minute ago? Sorry. No. The lions were coming. And again, George Hadley was filled with admiration for the mechanical genius who had conceived this room. A miracle of efficiency, selling for an absurdly low price. Every home should have one. Oh, occasionally they frightened you with their clinical accuracy. They startled you, gave you a twinge. But most of the time, what fun for everyone. Not only your own son and daughter, but for yourself when you felt like a quick jaunt to a foreign land, a quick change of scenery. Well, here it was. And here were the lions now, 15 feet away, so real, so feverishly and startlingly real, that you could feel the prickling fur on your hand, and your mouth was stuffed with the dusty upholstery smell of their heated pelts, and the yellow of them was in your eyes like the yellow of an exquisite French tapestry, the yellows of lions and summer grass, and the sound of the matted lion lungs exhaling on the silent noontide, and the smell of meat from the panting, dripping mouths.
So, can you think of something in more recent science fiction that this room reminds you of? It's kind of like the holodeck from Star Trek. Anyone familiar with that? Who's seen any Star Trek? Anyone familiar? How do you guys?
I know Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars is very classic. Yeah, Star Trek. So this room is like this simulation where you go in and it seems like they're in Africa, right? It seems like 3D. Feel the breeze. They had the odorophonics. They can smell.
Should look at the nursery. What's wrong with it? I don't know. Well then, I just want you to look at it is all, or call a psychologist in to look at it. What would a psychologist want with a nursery? You know very well what he'd want. His wife paused in the middle of the kitchen and watched the stove busy humming to itself, making supper for four. It's just that the nursery is different now than it was. All right, let's have a look. They walked down the hall of their soundproof Happy Life home, which had cost them $30,000 to install. This house which clothed and fed and rocked them to sleep and played and sang and was good to them. Their approach sensitized the switch somewhere, and the nursery light flickered on when they came within 10 feet of it.
This back up.
Yeah.
Similarly, behind them in the halls,
Right.
lights went on and off as they left them behind.
When
with
I
a
was,
soft ornamenticity.
all right. Let's see.
And the yellow of them was in your eyes like the yellow of an exquisite French tapestry, the yellows of lions in summer grass, and the sound of the matted lion lungs exhaling on the silent noontide,
Okay.
and the smell
There
of
we go.
meat
We're in the right place
from the
now.
panting, dripping mouths.
All
The
right.
lions stood looking at George and Lydia Hadley with terrible green-yellow eyes. Watch out! Screamed Lydia. The lions came running at them. Lydia bolted and ran. Instinctively, George sprang after her. Outside in the hall, with the door slammed, she was laughing, and she was crying. They both stood appalled at the other's reaction. George! Lydia. Oh, my dear, poor, sweet Lydia. They almost got us. Walls, Lydia, remember. Crystal walls, that's all they are. Oh, they look real, I must admit. Africa in your parlor. But it's all dimensional, super-reactionary, super-sensitive color film and mental tape film behind glass screens. It's all ordophonics and sonics, Lydia. Here's my handkerchief. I'm afraid. She came to him and put her body against him and cried steadily. Did you see? Did you feel? It's too real. Now, Lydia, you've got to tell Wendy and Peter not to read any more on Africa. Of course, he patted her. Promise? Sure. And lock the nursery for a few days until I get my nerves set. You know how difficult Peter is about that. When I punished him a month ago by locking the nursery for even a few hours, the tantrum he threw. And Wendy, too. They lived for the nursery. It's got to be locked. That's all there is to it. All right. Reluctantly, he locked the huge door. You've been working too hard. You need a rest. I don't know, she said, blowing her nose, sitting down in a chair that immediately began to rock and comfort her. Maybe I don't have enough to do. Maybe I have time to think too much. Why don't we shut the whole house off for a few days and take a vacation? You mean you want to fry my eggs for me? Yes, she nodded. And darn my socks? Yes, a frantic, worry-eyed nodding. And sweep the house? Yes, oh yes. But I thought that's why we bought this house, so you wouldn't have to do anything. That's just it. I feel like I don't belong here. The house is wife and mother now and nursemaid. Can I compete with an African belt? Can I give a bath and scrub the children as efficiently or quickly as the automatic scrub bath can? I cannot. And it isn't just me, it's you. You've been awfully nervous lately. I suppose I have been smoking too much. You look as if you didn't know what to...
All right, let's do a little bit of this together. So, have we seen any examples of the parents' relationship to technology so far? I saw some of you had probably missed some chances here as I was looking. Have we seen examples of the children's relationship? Remember, it doesn't have to actually have the children directly in the story in person. It could be like what we've just been listening to, where the parents are talking about how the house takes care of the children, right? How it does all the stuff for them. And we haven't really gotten to this yet. And remember, oh, by the way, guys, this is the bonus question here. So if you find anything in the text that relates to the bonus question, go ahead and put that in the center. Does tech cause bad mental states? We're already seeing some possibility. That's not what I meant to. Oh no, I'm at my place again. This is a pain. I apologize, guys.
Wife and mother now and nursemaid.
Remember where I was at. Good.
Can I compete with an African belt? Can I give a bath and scrub the children as efficiently or quickly as the automatic scrub bath can? I cannot. And it isn't just me, it's you. You've been awfully nervous lately. I suppose I have been smoking too much. You look as if you didn't know what to do with yourself in this house either. You smoke a little more every morning, and drink a little more every afternoon, and need a little more sedative every night. You're beginning to feel unnecessary too. Am I? He paused and tried to feel into himself to see what was really there. Oh, George. She looked beyond him at the nursery door. Those lions can't get out of there, can they? He looked at the door and saw it tremble as if something had jumped against it from the other side. Of course not, he said. At dinner, they ate alone, for Wendy and Peter were in a special plastic carnival across town and had televised home to say they'd be late to go ahead eating. So George Hadley, bemused, sat watching the dining room table produce warm dishes of food from its mechanical interior. We forgot the ketchup, he said. Sorry, said a small voice within the table, and ketchup appeared. As for the nursery, thought George Hadley, it won't hurt for the children to be locked out of it a while. Too much of anything isn't good for anyone. And it was clearly indicated that the children had been spending a little too much time on Africa. That sun, he could feel it on his neck, still, like a hot paw. And the lions, and the smell of blood. Remarkable how the nursery caught the telepathic emanations of the children's minds and created life to fill their every desire. The children thought lions, and there were lions. The children...
Okay, so that's a really important point, right? How does this nursery work? Why does it come up? Yeah, exactly. It's reading your thoughts. If you think lions, it makes lions.
Thought zebras, and there were zebras. Sun, sun. Giraffes, giraffes. Death, and death. At last, he chewed tastelessly on the meat that table had cut for him. Death thoughts. They were awfully young, Wendy and Peter, for death thoughts. Or, no, you were never too young, really. Long before you knew what death was, you were wishing it on someone else. When you were 2 years old, you were shooting people with cap pistols. But this, the long, hot African belt, the awful death in the jaws of a lion, and repeated again and again. Where are you going?
Okay, take a moment. Your first comprehension question. You have enough information now to answer that. Those are right here, you guys. Why is Liddy unhappy in her home? Contrast this with the way George seems to be. He's starting to show a little concern though, right? Yeah, make sure you prioritize the highlighting, okay?
He didn't answer Lydia. Preoccupied, he let the lights glow softly on ahead of him, extinguished behind him as he padded to the nursery door. He listened against it. Far away, a lion roared. He unlocked the door and opened it. Just before he stepped inside, he heard a faraway scream, and then another roar from the lions, which subsided quickly. He stepped into Africa. How many times in the last year had he opened this door and found Wonderland, Alice, the Mock Turtle, or Aladdin and his magical lamp, or Jack Pumpkinhead of Oz, or Dr. Dolittle, or the cow jumping over a very real appearing moon. All the delightful contraptions of a make-believe world. How often had he seen Pegasus flying in the sky ceiling, or seen fountains of red fireworks, or heard angel voices singing? But now, this yellow, hot Africa, this bake oven with murder in the heat. Perhaps Lydia was right. Perhaps they needed a little vacation from the fantasy which was growing a bit too real for 10-year-old children. It was all right to exercise one's mind with gymnastic fantasies, but when the lively child mind settled on one pattern, it seemed that at a distance, for the past month he had heard lions roaring and smelled their strong odors seeping as far away as his study door. But being busy, he had paid it no attention. George Hadley stood on the African grassland alone. The lions looked up from their feeding, watching him. The only flaw to the illusion was the open door through which he could see his wife, far down the dark hall like a framed picture, eating her dinner abstractedly. Go away, he said to the lions. They did not go. He knew the principle of the room exactly. You sent out your thoughts. Whatever you thought would appear. Let's have Aladdin and his lamp, he snapped. The belt lamp remained. The lions remained. Come on, room. I demand Aladdin, he said. Nothing happened. The lions mumbled in their baked pelts. Aladdin! He went back to dinner. The full room's out of order, he said. He won't respond. Or what? Or it can't respond, said Lydia, because the children have thought about Africa and lions and killing so many days that the room's in a rut. Could be. Or...
All right, what's Lydia's concern? Why is it not changing? She's speculating. Because they thought about lions so much that the room is stuck in a rut. Corbin. So why is what's Lydia's concern of why the room is stuck?
Or rather than stuck, she might think that
Because the children have been thinking about lions so much. That's the point. I want you guys to get that. They've been thinking about lions so much that it's stuck. Now there's one other possibility that's going to come up. And I want you guys to notice that one too. Or why the room isn't changing. All right, make sure that you're doing the highlighting, you're reading along, okay?
Or Peter said it to remain that way. Said it. He may have got into the machinery and fixed something. Peter doesn't know machinery. He's a wise one for 10. That IQ of his, nevertheless. Hello, Mom. Hello?
So what's the other possibility proposed for why it's not changing?
said it.
They think maybe Peter is tinkered with it or something.
Dad, the Hadleys turned. Wendy and Peter were coming in the front door, cheeks like peppermint candy.
Okay. Actually, right here is a good place to pause and fill out the second question. What did the kids use to create the playroom? You guys remember? We're not talking about actually physically building it, right? Yep. Why is it so important to the adults? The room has not changed lately. So write that in.
Eyes like bright blue agate marbles, a smell of ozone on their jumpers from their trip in the helicopter. You're just in time for supper, said both parents. We're both full of strawberry ice cream and hot dogs, said the children, holding hands. But we'll sit and watch. Yes, come tell us about the nursery, said George Hadley. The brother and sister looked at him and at each other. Nursery? All about Africa and everything, said the father with false joviality. I don't understand, said Peter. Your mother and I were just traveling through Africa with Rod and Rio. Tom Swift and his electric lion, said George Hadley. There's no Africa in the nursery, said Peter simply. Oh, come now, Peter, we know better. I don't remember any Africa, said Peter to Wendy. Do you? No. Run see and come tell. She obeyed. Wendy, come back here, said George Hadley. But she was gone. The house lights followed her like a flock of fireflies. Too late, he realized he'd forgotten to lock the nursery door after his last inspection. Wendy will look and come tell us, said Peter. She doesn't have to tell me. I've seen it. I'm sure you're mistaken, Father. I'm not Peter. Come along now. But Wendy was back. It's not Africa, she said breathlessly. We'll see about this, said George Hadley. And they all walked down the hall together and opened the nursery door. There was a green, lovely forest, a lovely river, a purple mountain, high voices singing, and Rima, lovely and mysterious, lurking in the trees with colorful...
Okay, so you guys aren't going to know who Rima is, probably. There was a 1904 novel that during this time was still well known, and Rima was like a little forest girl. So that's what that reference is.
Butterflies, like animated bouquets, lingering in her long hair. The African veldland was gone. The lions were gone. Only Rima was here now, singing a song so beautifully that it brought tears to your eyes. George Hadley looked in at the chain scene. Go to bed, he said to the children. They opened their mouths. You heard me, he said. They went off to the air closet, where a wind sucked them like brown leaves up the flue to their slumber rooms. George Hadley walked through the singing glade and picked up something that lay in the corner near where the lions had been. He walked slowly back to his wife. "What is that?" she asked. "An old wallet of mine," he said. He showed it to her. The smell of hot grass was on it, and the smell of a lion. There were drops of saliva on it. It had been chewed, and there were blood smears on both sides.
Any theories about what this suggests? What do you think, Daniel? Finds a wallet in there. Even though when he goes in, it's not Africa anymore. He finds his wallet over where the lions have been. And his wallet has blood on it, saliva on it. What does that suggest? Any ideas? Right, be thinking about that. Victoria, have any ideas? No? If you found my wallet, let's say you knew my wallet for some reason, you're like, "Oh, this is Mr. Burke's wallet. Hey, why is there blood all over it?" What would you worry?
Thinking someone got you.
Yeah, you'd think maybe like something happened to Mr. Burke, right?
Mr. Burke did something.
He closed the nursery door and locked it tight. In the middle of the night, he was still awake, and he knew his wife was awake.
Good catch.
"Do you think Wendy changed it?" she said at last in the dark room. "Of course. Made it from a veldt into a forest and put Rima there instead of lions? Yes. Why? I don't know. But it's staying locked until I find out." "How did you want to get there?" "I don't know anything," he said, "except that I'm beginning to be sorry we bought that room for the children. If children are neurotic at all, a room like that is supposed to help them work off their neuroses in a healthful way. I'm starting to wonder." He stared at the ceiling. "We've given the children everything they ever wanted. Is this our reward? Secrecy? Disobedience? Who was it said children are carpets? They should be stepped on occasionally. We've never lifted a hand. They're insufferable, let's admit it. They come and go when they like. They treat us as if we're offspring. They're spoiled, and we're spoiled. They've been acting funny ever since you forbade them to take the rocket to New York a few months ago. They're not old enough to do that alone, I explained. Nevertheless, I've noticed they've been decidedly cool toward us since. I think I'll have David McLean come tomorrow morning to have a look at Africa. But it's not Africa now. It's Green Mansion's country, and Rima. I have a feeling it'll be Africa again before then." A moment later, they heard the screams. 2 screams. 2 people screaming from downstairs. And then a roar of lions. "Wendy and Peter aren't in their rooms," said his wife. He lay in his bed with his beating heart. "No," he said. "They've broken into the nursery. Those screams. They sound familiar." "Do they?" "Yes, awfully." And although their beds tried very hard, the 2 adults couldn't be rocked to sleep for another hour.
Any ideas why they might sound familiar?
In the night air.
With screams?
"Father," said Peter. "Yes." Peter looked at his shoes. He never looked at his father anymore, nor at his mother. "You aren't going to lock up the nursery for good, are you?" "That all depends." "On what?" snapped Peter. "On you and your sister. If you intersperse this Africa with a little variety, Sweden perhaps, or Denmark, or China. I thought we were free to play as we wished." "You are, within reasonable bounds." "What's wrong with Africa, Father?" "Oh, so now you admit you have been conjuring up Africa, do you?" "I wouldn't want the nursery locked up," said Peter coldly. "Ever. Matter of fact, we've been thinking of turning the whole house off for about a month. Live sort of a carefree, one-for-all existence." "That sounds dreadful. Would I have to tie my own shoes instead of letting the shoe tire do it? And brush my own teeth? And comb my hair and give myself a bath? It would be fun for a change, don't you think?"
That's probably something to highlight here, right?
It would be horrid. I didn't like it when you took out the picture painter last month. That's because I wanted you to learn to paint all by yourself, son. I don't want to do anything but look and listen and smell. What else is there to do? All right, go play in Africa. Will you shut off the house sometime soon? We're considering it. I don't think you better consider it any more, Father. I won't have any threats from my son. Very well. And Peter strolled off to the nursery.
Alright. Can answer the next question. Feel free to discuss it with each other as well. Describe and explain the conversation George and Lydia have with their children. How much control do these parents have over their children? Writing. So we've had this David McLean mentioned. They want to have come. Who do you think David McLean is? Are they worried? What are they worried about for their children? What do you think? And specifically, like this issue of always having the African built lions, the killer lions. Like, what type of concern is that for the parents have? What are they fearing of being the case for their children? What was that?
The kids depend on everything else.
All right. What about the vicious lions specifically? All right. Is that a concern to the parents? Yeah, and it's like always this obsession, right? So they're worried for their children's mental health, emotional health. So they want to have this guy David McLean come. Mention him a little bit. We'll have him a little bit more.
Am I on time? Said David McLean. Breakfast? Asked George Hammond. Thanks. Had some. What's the trouble? David, you're a psychologist. I should hope so. Well then, have a look at our nursery. You saw it
All right. So what's David? Psychologist.
a year ago when you dropped by. Did you notice anything peculiar about it then? Can't say I did. The usual violences, a tendency toward a slight paranoia here or there, usual in children because they feel persecuted by parents constantly, but really nothing. They walked down the hall. I locked the nursery up, explained the father, and the children broke back in during the night. I let them stay, so they could form the patterns for you to see. There was a terrible screaming in the nursery. There it is, said George Hadley. See what you make of it. They walked in on the children without rapping. The screams had faded. The lions were feeding. Run outside a moment, children, said George Hadley. No, don't change the mental combination. Leave the walls as they are. Get. With the children gone, the two men stood studying the lions clustered at a distance, eating with great relish whatever it was they had caught. I wish I knew what it was, said George Hampton. Sometimes I can almost see. Do you think if I brought high-powered binoculars here? David McLean laughed dryly. Hardly. He turned to study all four walls. How long has this been going on? A little over a month. It certainly doesn't feel good. I want facts, not feelings. My dear George, a psychologist never saw a fact in his life. He only hears about feelings, vague things. This doesn't feel good, I tell you. Trust my hunches and my instincts. I have a nose for something bad. This is very bad. My advice to you is to have the whole damn room torn down and your children brought to me every day during the next year for treatment. Is it that bad? I'm afraid so. One of the original uses of these nurseries was so that we could study the patterns left on the walls by the children's mind, study at our leisure, and help the child. In this case, however, the room has become a channel toward destructive thoughts instead of a release away from them. Didn't you sense this before? I sensed only that you had spoiled your children more than most, and now you're letting them down in some way. What way? I wouldn't let them go to New York. What else? I've taken a few machines from the house and threatened them a month ago with closing up the nursery unless they did their homework. I did close it for a few days to show I meant business. Does that mean anything? Everything. Where before they had a Santa Claus, now they have a Scrooge. Children prefer Santas. You've let this room and this house replace you and your wife and your children's affections. This room is their mother and father, far more important in their lives than their real parents. And now you come along and want to shut it off. No wonder there's hatred here. You can feel it coming out of the sky.
Probably a little bit of highlighting there, right?
Feel that sun, George. You'll have to change your life. Like too many others, you built it around creature comforts. Why, you'd starve tomorrow if something went wrong in your kitchen. You wouldn't know how to tap an egg. Nevertheless, turn everything off. Start new. It'll take time. But we'll make good children out of bad in a year. Wait to see. But won't the shock be too much for the children? Shutting the room up abruptly for good? I don't want them going any deeper into this, that's all. The lions were finished with their red feast. The lions were standing on the edge of the clearing, watching the two men. Now I'm feeling persecuted, said McLean. Let's get out of here. I never have cared for these damn rooms. Make me nervous. The lions look real, don't they, said George Hadley. I don't suppose there's any way. What? That they could become real. Not that I know. Some flaw in the machinery, tampering or something. No. They went to the door. I don't imagine the room will like being turned off, said the father. Nothing ever likes to die, even a room. I wonder if it hates me for wanting to switch it off. Paranoia is thick around here today, said David McLean. You can follow it like a spore. Hello. He bent and picked up a bloody scarf. Is yours? No. George Hadley's face was rigid. It belongs to Lydia. They went.
All right. What was the last thing like this that was found?
His wallet.
The wallet. Now we have Lydia's bloody scar.
Together and threw the switch that killed the nursery. The two children were in hysterics. They screamed and pranced and threw things. They yelled and sobbed and swore and jumped at the furniture. You can't do that to the nursery. You can't. Now, children. The children flung themselves onto a couch weeping. George, said Lydia Hadley, turn on the nursery just for a few moments. You can't be so abrupt. No, you can't be so cruel. Lydia, it's off and it stays off. And the whole damn house dies as of here and now. The more I see of the mess we put ourselves in, the more it sickens me. We've been contemplating our mechanical, electronic navels for too long.
And this part of the story, it always reminds me of all the stuff that I've seen in grocery stores mostly. where there's like a kid that's like crying, wants something, like a piece of candy. I remember one time I was doing security and I was, you know, the stores, how there's like, you see these windows, they're kind of slanted downward, right? They're up high. So I was up in there and I was looking through that kind of two-way mirror stuff, right? So I'm looking through and I'm up there with some other employees. We're on a break. And we see this lady and her kid is crying and screaming. He wants this lollipop. She's like, no, no, hush, hush. And he starts screaming and crying. And we start rooting for her. We're like, don't give it to him. Don't give it to him. And then finally she's like, oh, buy me her. She gives it to him. And we're like, oh, no. Just teaching the kid to behave badly. So I'm kind of glad that this aspect of the, I think, kind of typical dysfunction between parents and kids was put into this novel here.
My God, how we need a breath of honest air. We marched about the house, turning off the voice clocks, the stoves, the heaters, the shoe shiners, the shoelacers, the body scrubbers and swabbers and massagers, and every other machine he could put his hand to. The house was full of dead bodies and smelled. It felt like a mechanical cemetery. So silent. None of the humming, hidden energy of machines waiting to function at the tap of a button. Don't let them do it, wailed Peter at the ceiling, as if he was talking to the house, the nursery. Don't let Father kill everything. He turned to his father. Oh, I hate you. Insults won't get you anywhere. I wish you were dead. We were, for a long while. Now we're going to really start living. Instead of being handled and massaged, we're going to live. Wendy was still crying, and Peter joined her again. Just a moment, just one moment, just another moment of nursery, they wailed. Oh, George, said the wife, it can't hurt. All right, all right. They'll only just shut up. 1 minute, mind you, and then off forever. Daddy, 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 sang the children, smiling with wet faces. And then we're going on a vacation. David McLean is coming back in half an hour to help us move out and get to the airport. I'm going to dress. You turn the nursery on for a minute, Lydia. Just a minute, mind you. And the three of them went babbling off while he let himself be vacuumed upstairs through the air flue and set about dressing himself. A minute later, Lydia appeared. I'll be glad to get away, she sighed. Did you leave in the nursery? I wanted to dress too. Oh, that horrid Africa. What can they see in it? Well, in 5 minutes we'll be on our way to Iowa. Lord, how did we ever get in this house? What prompted us to buy a nightmare? Pride, money, foolishness. I think we'd better get downstairs before those kids get engrossed with those damn beasts again. Just then they heard the children calling, Daddy, Mommy, come quick, quick! They went downstairs in the air flue and ran down the hall. The children were nowhere in sight. Wendy? Peter? They ran into the nursery. The land was empty, save for the lions, waiting, looking at them. Peter! Wendy! The door slammed. Wendy! Peter! George Hadley and his wife whirled and ran back to the door. Open the door, cried George Hadley, trying the knob. Why, they'd locked it from the outside. Peter! He beat at the door. Open up! He heard Peter's voice outside, against the door. Don't let them switch off the nursery in the house, he was saying. Mr. and Mrs. George Hadley beat at the door. Now, don't be ridiculous, children. It's time to go. Mr. McLean will be here in a minute, and then they heard the sounds. The lions on 3 sides of them, and the yellow veldt grass, padding through the dry straw, rumbling and roaring in their throats. The lions. Mr. Hadley looked at his wife, and they turned and looked back at the beasts edging slowly forward, crouching, tails stiff. Mr. and Mrs. Hadley screamed, and suddenly they realized why those other screams had sounded familiar.
Catch that? How many people before, when they were talking about the scream seeming familiar, had some little, maybe a little suspicion that it was going to be like a simulation of someone dying that they knew at least? Yeah? Anyone have that kind of, and then especially maybe once you saw the wallet, you're like, oh, and then the scarf, you're like, oh, they're simulating their parents being eaten by the lions. Now the parents are really getting eaten by the lions.
Well, here I am, said David McLean in the nursery doorway. Oh, hello. He stared at the two children, seated in the center of the open glade, eating a little picnic lunch. Beyond them was the water hole and the yellow land. Above was the hot sun. He began to perspire. Where are your father and mother? The children looked up and smiled. Oh, they'll be here directly. Good. We must get going. At a distance, Mr. McLean saw the lions fighting and clawing, and then quieting down to feed in silence under the shady trees. He squinted at the lions with his hand up to his eyes. Now the lions were done feeding. They moved to the water hole to drink. A shadow flickered over Mr. McLean's hot face. Many shadows flickered. The vultures were dropping down the blazing sky. A cup of tea? Asked Wendy in the silence.
Here we go. This section, context plus quote. This is where your highlighting becomes very helpful to you, other than the fact that I'm grading it. So context plus quote. You guys remember, context is the situation leading up to the quote and any necessary background information to understand the quote. So that's why you're packaging them together. So Aiden, what's context? Situation leading up to the quote and any necessary background information to understand the quote. Daniel, what's context?
You can say it after that.
Say it in your own words.
Oh,
The situation leading up to the quote and any necessary background information to understand the quote. Savion, what's context?
information leading to
The
the
situation.
background.
Yeah, and background information. Very good. All right, Victoria, what's context? And the situation leading up to the quote. All right, Jaina, what's context? It's leading up to the quote. And what else? If there's any background information, you need to understand the quote. Right? All right. What is context?
Background information.
Background information and the situation leading up to the quote. So that's why it's packaged together, context plus quote. Because do you remember that little context exercise with the paragraph where I used the same imaginary ridiculous scenarios with all of you? Remember I walked it, and I was helping you with it, and I would say, I'm going to give you 3 scenarios for this. You remember that? I would say, okay, in a dream I had last night, remember that one? And then you would say, Mr. Bird, that's not a very good argument. Who cares about the dream you had last night, right? And then the other one was walking down the street last Halloween, and it seemed to me like the kids in mass took more candy, right? And you're like, well, at least that's reality, but it's still pretty subjective. It's not very good evidence. And then when I said, in a study conducted by psychologists, blah, 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 at Purdue University in 1979, right? Remember that? And then suddenly you had context. You're like, oh, now this quote now has more meaning. Whether that quote meant something all depends on the context. So you can have the context plus the quote. And then, what's the job of the analysis?
To connect.
The analysis is commentary on how your evidence supports your claim. So guys, just think of this like common sense. Imagine that I'm in court, and I'm like, I start out and I say, Savion is guilty. And here's my evidence. And then I say, as I start talking about the evidence, so that shows that computers are really cool. People be like, wait, I thought we were talking about whether Savion was guilty, right? Like you wouldn't expect that. You would expect the analysis of the evidence to like come back around to, and that proves Savion's guilty, right? So your job of analysis is to support your claim. Make sure that's happening. So you guys can work on this as a group. You're going to have the children's relationship with technology. You're going to have two of these. Technology. You're going to have context plus quote in your analysis. And guess what job this is going to make easier later? When we make a paragraph, right? Then you're just going to have some copy and pasting, right? Which is kind of the silver lining to the fact that they didn't deliver this isn't copy and pasting. We do have the paper. They didn't deliver the other stuff, but yeah, so you'll have to re-enter this. But that's good. Actually, I know you guys don't like that, but it'll be helpful to your learning. So, and the children's relationship with the parents. You're gonna get two of those as well. Where do I usually find context? Aiden, where do I usually find context? Eric.
Before the quote.
Right before the quote. Usually. Right? So Eric, I'm afraid your teeth are going to rot out. Get so much candy. Do you play sports? Huh? Do you play sports? No. You always catch really well.
Yeah, one goal.
You guys can discuss. His head is down, but he's actually busily working. He's just resting his neck. Good. You got some start pattern here. Your context, though, is going to reach out before the quote, right? Oh, I thought it was that quote marks right there. Okay, where's the context? Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. Sounds like you know what you're doing. Maybe it'd be helpful if you guys forget what your highlighting represents. So I'll put it back to here, okay? So this first one is children's relationship with technology. So you're going to look for the orange to find the quote. Yes, smart. Oh, for HST? Yeah. I think it's too late. They don't let me flag in like after 9:30. So, are you already assigned to an HST that's different?
Yes. I don't have any.
Great.
Joel House.
Do you know what I should start doing, guys? I should start taking a moment at the beginning of class. Remind me about this, okay? To have you guys sign up for your HSTs. That way you guys can get into study hall. Okay? Or, you know, other teachers, their classes matter too, right? A little bit. Yeah. And then she'll let you know it's like critiquing and stuff, try to get you ready for the state. The state. They have the hard schedule, so there's like so I bet you extra motivation. Get your context. Remember the orange is going to be where you're going to get the quote for these two. So go back through and look for the orange. Remember your orange highlighting, guys, is where you find the quotes for the first part. Very good. Some of you guys have moved on, but most of you are still on the first place. Find there. So you know what? This isn't the one we should decide. This is just one where I mark them off. So we're going to
You showing him Brownie said that. Was it? Oh my god. You gonna you can want to start with your face? So what's gonna be out of here for? Yeah, right. Define context as one. Define context as one. Perfect. See, that's my stellar group, my B class. About when the had context. What'd you do? Context when you're locked in there.
All right, I guess you can turn it off now. We're ready to start. Thank you.